I'm with Akhilesh Upadhyay, the former editor of the Kathmandu Post newspaper and currently the project lead of the Center for Geostrategic Affairs at IIDS, a think tank in Kathmandu, Nepal. I'm Jyoti Malhotra from the Tribune, and today I'm speaking to Akhilesh Upadhyay in Kathmandu about the chaos, about the anger, the outrage, the protest movement in Kathmandu and across several big towns and cities across Nepal these last couple of days. What we see on the TV screens is that Kathmandu at least seems to be a bit quiet this morning. But first of all, Mr. Upadhyay, let me welcome you to the Tribune. Welcome.
Thank you, Jyoti.
My first question to you, Mr. Upadhyay, is about this anger, this outrage of young people protesting on the streets. We've been hearing this phrase Gen Z, but today on Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, as I speak to you, the streets of Kathmandu, from what we see on our TV screens, seem to be quiet. Describe to us, tell us what's happening this morning.
It's a lot more calmer, a lot more quieter, and the Gen Z people at work, sweeping, cleaning the city. Very young people, 2 days of, how would I say, kind of chaos and a lot of disturbance on the streets. It was actually inconveniencing people. It was a serious eyesore, so much so that it also hits your psychology, the state of mind, But today I can see kind of hundreds of Gen Z folks right on the street cleaning up all the mess and going on record on social media saying, we got to kind of get it under control. We have achieved largely what we were looking for, but I would like to qualify that the larger, fight for normalcy and the new regime change from one to the other has just begun, and it will be an uphill task, long and difficult, where we will need a lot of patience from diverse sections of the society and political stakeholders, of course.
So, Akhilesh, explain to us and describe to us, an Indian audience, about what happened these last 2 days. Monday, we had the student protests on the street. There was firing, including live firing by the armed police. And on Tuesday, what we saw was quite extraordinary. I don't think people have seen anything like this before. Not only did these young student protesters burn down several buildings across Kathmandu and elsewhere in Nepal, but also hit and beat up senior politicians like former Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba, his wife, the current Foreign Minister Arzu Rana, and the Finance Minister, Mr. Podel. Also, we believe that Jhalanath Kanal, the former Prime Minister, his wife was burnt alive. Now, how do you explain this? And would you not say that this is absolutely that you cannot justify it? It's not just unjustifiable, but it's also pretty awful.
Yes, I would like to give it a context, so that the Indian audience, your audience, get it and where we come from, what happened. A lot of television footages show the situational reality, not so much the background. And this is where I want to come in, The fight against corruption, especially on social media, and led by the youth, is something in Nepal we are familiar to, While the many old party leaders kind of saw it as okay, this is what it is, we can't do anything about it, even when they said we can do about it sometimes. But we all saw it again and again, repeated every night on television newspapers next morning. The same leaders from the party saying, we'll fight corruption, I stand against corruption. And while we saw the children and grandchildren going to expensive holidays abroad and wearing brand names and then brandishing it, kind of Gucci bags to everything, So the social media people would then put, a daughter of a leader and say, okay, this is our bag, this costs this many $1,000s. this is her shoes, this costs this much. So the flight costs this much up and down, and the place they stayed costs this much. And they had been, I mean, I'm not saying everyone, but many of these kids, extremely tech savvy, took a spin to the some of the footages that people like to kind of like leaders' children or leaders themselves like to flaunt on social media. So they would take the same pictures from the same website and say, okay, you've been in Switzerland or you've been there, whatever, look, this costs this much. And this is all at taxpayers' cost. And then don't forget, Nepal's top leaders of all these parties, KP Oli, Sherbahadur Deuba, and Prachanda, they didn't inherit any generational wealth. If anything, two of them actually came from the ground as a communist leaders, kind of son of the soil, if I may,
That
and
is
we could see
Prachanda and also which is so
Oli,
one is of course Prachanda and the other is Prime
KP
Minister
Oli.
KP Oli, yeah, who's just resigned. Yes.
Yeah, but also Sherbahadur Deuba, former Prime Minister and Prime Minister in waiting, in fact. So there was a musical chair going on since 1990, whereby these 4 or 5 patriarchs, kind of like would rotate in this musical game, okay? And there was a lot of kind of like shadow dancing, one saying, oh, he's not a great fellow, by the way. Then they would again form the coalition among themselves, and the new government will be formed, and one of these fours will be in the government again. And one time briefly was, not briefly, was again another patriarch from another party who is split away, Madhav Kumar Nepal, and Baburam Bhattrai, also from then the Maoist party.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a fallout now already. But that's not my point. My point being, so as much as they like to see each other as opposition or do brandish that, oh, I'm like not with him, the people see this musical chair game happen again and again since 1990. That's a long, long time.
Yeah.
So while many other Nepalese resigned, okay, in my lifetime I will not see these changes, and these guys will carry on anyway. But the Gen Z, the idea behind Gen Z was, no, we can change. We take personal agency for this.
So who are the
And
leaders?
unless
Who are the children? Which children of which leaders, Akhilesh? Which leaders? Was it Prachanda's children? Was it
Prachanda's daughters, 2 daughters? Look at their families. They're like wealthy and go to expensive schools and like travel around the world. I mean, like Prachanda is in hiding. No matter what he says, I mean, like yeah, I mean, the population, the Gen Z especially, takes a very dim view of our established political party leadership. And the way their family members, the leaders are a little careful.
What about KP Oli, the Prime Minister who just resigned? His children too?
KP Oli, I would say, doesn't have children.
Okay.
But the flaunting can come in different ways, kind of like, I don't associate KP Oli as much as the population. But then, like, he has extended family in the sense the UML.
So whose kids were, can you name a few leaders' children against whom there was this campaign or there was this gathering?
There was no campaign for one person. I'm just giving you a snapshot of how the
disgust,
social media,
the disgust.
Yes, and I would like to point out also 2 very important points. One, in the 2 mass movements, one that happened in 1990, it was still the newspapers that ruled the roost and television a bit. By the next Jana Andolan, as we call it, 2006 movement, yes, we begin to have like, how would I say, kind of like .com's influence, but also online influence by then. But last few years, our behaviors, including what we call news, is completely taken a different turn. I mean, like people are watching, say, what to wear on social media, and they're very solid in what to buy, which cars to ride, which motorcycle to be in, which is a safer city. You know, so whole idea of what was classically seen as news, and also like you're on that side, I'm a newsmaker, and you read me or you follow me, and a lot of people who come with like very solid specialized background, they create their own content, kind of like which is specialized, which is solid, and which is steeped on the discipline they come from. Say a young medical doctor talks about heart disease in a solid vocabulary, scientific vocabulary, rather than generic content. So these professional groups, without knowing each other, quite solidly connected through the world I'm speaking about, the digital world. Even if they are living in different geographies, yeah. The second point I would like to emphasize is, I mean, I would like to think like close to 5 to 6 million Nepalese live abroad now. The diasporic Nepali is very powerful, and I personally see them as extension of our Nepali nationhood. So
Right.
nationhood, as you speak, changes in Nepal. Kind of like very big diaspora. For example, Nepali diaspora has crossed 1% in Australia national population, and the city, the Tasmanian capital of Hobart, the city of Hobart has close to 17 or 18% of population that is Nepalese. But Sydney and Melbourne are also huge hubs of Nepalese, where they work from white collar jobs to kind of restaurants, students, and someone's saying, and my own experience when I was walking, after on a Friday evening, just to get a sense of Sydney, and I could see a lot of Nepalese kind of like, hey, saying, hey, come here. I mean, of course, in Nepali, etao maya chu. And a lot of them in waiters, students, kind of mingling in certain places that I visited. And then I could see, the kind of like lingua franca in these certain places were Nepali. So it also happens similarly in many other cities around the world. So this imagination, a sclerotic imagination of what is Nepali, is confined to the geography of Nepal, has gone for a complete toss. And this is where the idea of corruption, the idea of nepotism, that the leaders' children and grandchildren and their little fiefdom are entitled to make money like there is no tomorrow. They are not buying into this idea, this professional group's aspirations, but also blue collar people who are working abroad and their family not getting anywhere, huge unemployment at home.
Yeah.
So the reimagination of Nepalese, if you have a stable economy for
Yeah.
say 5 years, you can create these employments at home easily, because we are not a country of 1.8 billion, but only 13 million.
Yes.
And 5 years of steady growth means tens of thousands and millions of jobs here and safety of home. And what we see on television and news is, and I mean, at Kathmandu airport, we see like coffins coming home. And then the young people have died in, I don't know, various capitals or big cities in the Gulf, Malaysia. It's one of the saddest story. While we as there are tiny states like say Antigua, etc., which rely heavily on diasporic income, remittance. Nepal would be that mid-sized country, which is the highest in the world in terms of our GDP's reliance on income from remittances. So we are caught up in this, what I call remittance trap.
Right.
So those people who are going there, who are staying there, who have lived there, working there, they get it completely. And they want to be part of the national mainstream while geographically away, and vice versa. So this,
sorry to interrupt you, Akhilesh, but my question to you, there's a lot of commentary behind the scenes, behind the parda, a lot of speculation actually, that this protest movement in Nepal is also been inspired, shall we say, and that's a kind word that I'm using, by the Americans. Would you say?
Oh, I hear a similar stories about India, by the way.
Okay. You hear similar stories
I
that
do.
India has instigated this violence?
Yes. Yes. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And the story goes, the conspiracy theory goes, it's this way. Because Oli was not a big fan of, Delhi was not a big fan of Oli, and while the earlier prime ministers were immediately invited to Delhi, and he had in fact recently visited China, and then shook hands or met Xi Jinping, had a few things to say about friendly ties with China. A lot of Nepalese in real time are actually saying, "Oh, you know who is behind it? Why are we even going there?" Yeah, to me personally.
Mhm.
So India, China, China also has been, in Indian media, and there's a lot of, as you have like said now, there's a lot of speculation about China hand, India hand, and American hand. American hand for this reason. Oh, TikTok is open in Nepal because KP Oli is friendly with China, while the Facebook is closed because it's owned by America.
Mm.
So, in the lack of evidences, I don't want to speculate and go there and quickly point out to our big neighbors or US, where a huge big Nepali diaspora lives. So, yeah, I don't want to go there to these conspiracy theories. But if someone has evidences and puts it out there, I'm open to listen. Whether I buy that idea completely, I don't know. But there is also this big state way of looking at India, and Indian thinkers and journalists suffer from that. A lot of them to quickly ascribe everything Nepal does as and takes national agency as playing China card. So I think this is a cliche that Jyoti Malhotra, you'll do well to get rid of.
No, I completely agree with you, Akhilesh. In fact, we have an article in the Tribune newspaper today by Ranjit Ray. You know him. He is the former ambassador to
I know him
Nepal.
very well.
Yes. And in fact, he has written an article which says that it's a homegrown protest in Nepal, that he doesn't talk about any other country, but the implication is there. Basically, what he's saying is that there is the anger, the outrage, the fury of the young people that came out on the streets of Kathmandu and many other towns across Nepal. And he talks about a lot of the issues that you are talking about, which is that it's completely homegrown, that it's the anger of the people and their disgust at what they saw around them. So we don't buy that theory, Akhilesh. Let me tell you that.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. No. Hold on. Then, as a protest movement that has fanned across in days across the country, then you may ask, and I take it as an analyst, could there be infiltrations
Yeah.
from who knows how many groups?
And also, Akhilesh,
All
the reason, you yourself are talking about this infiltration, and I'll tell you, I think we were all very disturbed, both you and me, when you saw the kind of violence on the streets of Kathmandu yesterday. People just don't burn buildings like this. You don't burn your own parliament down. You don't burn you perhaps the offices of the political parties, because there's so much anger, like you said. But why would you burn the home of the prime minister, the traditional residence, Baluvatar? Why would you burn down
okay.
the
I'll
parliament?
tell you why. I
Yeah.
will tell you why from the
Yes.
ground.
Yes.
If you've seen your young classmate in school dress shot dead in cold blood the previous day, trust me, 200 people will burn anything because they're ready to get killed. I'm telling you, you are only 17, 18, 19. And I have seen such cathartic songs played out on the streets for the dead, young kids singing with beautiful music, candlelit evening, and others dancing spontaneously, and everyone's crying. So these kids would go far. You and I sitting conveniently in the desktop may say that, oh, why would they go far? What I'm saying is, people at this age are the people who make extremely courageous climb Mount Everest to everything, but they are also prone to violence, But I can also see that the anger was so palpable in the streets of Kathmandu until yesterday afternoon. thousands of them literally next door to where I live, where they were gherawing Prime Minister KP Oli's party. And I could see the rays slowly come down, not immediately. And the army was kind of like deployed by midnight or late night. And I was actually appealing to some people I know that, hey, isn't it too late? We should get something out and about, because police in public eyes have lost some bit of respect, and because that's the footage of them like gunning down kids in. I mean, it was viral all day on Monday. Yes.
But to kill, I mean, how could they think of using live ammunition and shooting directly at their own people? That is absolutely unimaginable, Akhilesh. How does that happen?
It happens when the government goes through hubris. With the guns, I can kind of like do anything.
You think,
so look,
they
where is
would
Oli?
have got permission? You think they
Look,
would
where
have
is Oli?
got permission?
No, I will say this. Where is Oli today? Do you know his whereabouts?
Well, there are two theories. One is that he's under custody of the army, so that he's safe there, and the other is that there is another rumor that he's fled to Dubai.
Yes, there you go. So what I'm saying is, hubris does amazing things to leaders. Once in power, you don't see beyond the walls of Balwatar, and the previous movements. I mean, like little movements. I'm not talking about 2006 mass movement when millions were on the street across Nepal.
Yeah.
They came and went, but this one is the youngest demographic I've seen in my lifetime on the streets. By far the youngest demographic. And they think we can change. They are not compromising. They come with hope for the aspirations for the future. And I saw this young guy kind of like stopping a school bus where there were kids, and he said, he's himself young, in his like 20s. Hey, in Nepali, we are fighting for your future. Don't worry from us. And he's telling these like school kids, third grader, second grader, hey, don't worry, we're just like you. So this is like a story unimaginable to someone who lives in Delhi or Washington or even like other capitals. But I see that every day on the street. And this morning, these kids are sweeping the streets, cleaning up the potted plants that were like felled as they ran helter skelter.
So, Akhilesh, let me ask you, who is the next Prime Minister of Nepal? Is it Balen Shah, the mayor of Kathmandu? You're not answering that question.
I am not into guessing game, The Upadhyayas in the, 100 years is to look at your palm and say, okay, this is the next Prime Minister or the next wife. But I don't want to get into this hazardous.
But let me ask you, as a journalist, and you're a former journalist, you're the former editor of the Kathmandu Post. As a journalist, wouldn't you want to know? I mean, there's a lot of talk again of Balen Shah, this young, this Gen Z leader who's the mayor of Kathmandu. And I remember interviewing him in 2022 when your elections were held 3 years ago. And, he's very, very suave, very articulate. Rabi Lamichane, who was in jail and is now out, again, another member formerly of this government, but then he quit. So is it these people who are going to be forming the next government of Nepal?
And I hope more, honestly. I mean, like I'm not a kind of journalist or a person anyway to deify a person. And then you can quickly vilify if he or she doesn't live up to your expectations.
Right.
That's like dangerous game to get into. Mm-hmm. I am more for putting institutions in place so that we don't again fall back to that, kind of like a single person. And Oli, for example, UML is so much centered around Oli. Oli hasn't actually groomed a successor. That's a dangerous game to get into. Because I know some UML leaders, just as some Nepali Congress leaders, are deeply popular on the ground. And suddenly they don't have a leader to kind of sell their party at the center, So this is what I'm saying. Balen Shah, solid guy, great mayoral term already. As you said, savvy, educated, I mean, like engineer, structural engineer, also a rapper. I mean, like he has like a lot of skills. But has he run a country? Okay, let's put it this way: running a country as diverse as ours, kind
That's
of
right.
like from the Himalayan,
Not easy.
uh, not easy. And within such a small geography, on the east we have Sikkim, on the north we have Tibetan Autonomous Region, in the south tropics of
You're right.
Tarai, yeah, which is neighboring region to India's among the most populated state. One, of course, by far the most populated, Western Tarai to UP, and Eastern Tarai to
To Bengal.
Bihar.
And Bihar and then
Yeah,
Bengal
yeah.
as well.
No,
And you have
no, no,
Uttarakhand.
no.
So it's a
I'll
very
get
wide
I'll
border.
get into Bengal. I'll get into Bengal. Bengal is only my part of the country, which is like Mechi Ansal. Kind of like Mechi is divided by Mechi Border River. To the south, kind of is the Chicken Neck, next to my hometown, actually, Bhadrapur. On this side of Mechi is where I was born. And the other side of Mechi is Galgalia railway station in Bihar, you know. And if you go slightly north from there, there's the Chicken Neck of West Bengal and Darjeeling up. And further up is Sikkim, north.
Yeah.
And the past, of course, northeastern state and Arunachal Pradesh, not too far away.
Last couple of
And then
questions. Yeah. Sorry, Akhilesh. So last couple of questions. The reason is that the army. Now, the army took almost 2 days to come into this story, right? It was only late on Tuesday evening that I think once the political leaders like Sher Bahadur Deoba, his wife Arzu Rana, once they started getting beaten up, Jhalanath Kanal, then and the army started taking them into custody because clearly they would not be safe anywhere else. And then late night, we saw the army chief who addressed the nation. Do you think that the role of the army will be one of stabilizing the country, like you said, a very, very diverse country? Or do you think that the
oh,
army could take power and keep power and be like behind the scenes, like you have in Pakistan, for example?
okay. I mean, historically, Nepal army hasn't been adventurist. Even when we had monarchy, Nepal's history quite well. One of some few Indian journalists who's travels frequently and reads. I mean, you have read a lot about Nepal's history, and we've interacted in Delhi.
Yeah.
Even in the time when the autocratic kings ruled between 60 and 90, the army was always at the background, happily lost in the background. The civilian face were the kings,
Yes.
then became the prime ministers. Kind of Girja Prasad Koirala, first one after the restoration of democracy in 1990. Army has pretty much been behind the barracks. So that this is where we are fundamentally different from Pakistani society or Pakistani polity, and also Bangladeshi polity, where there are histories of army rulers getting adventurous. So that being the case, the army as a civilian leader, army as the front face is perhaps not quite palatable to Nepali politics at all. I would be. Yesterday, one Indian channel said that Nepal's president Ramchandra Paudel has resigned, and as I was speaking live, and I couldn't believe it. But who knows? Because I had been speaking for a while, maybe he had resigned. And one of the first things, once the phone was down, is I talked to one of the party leaders, and he says, no, certain parties he's in touch with to say how would the next civilian government be formed.
Right.
Who could be representatives, So Nepal's history, he's the commander-in-chief at the head of state,
absolutely.
and there's army. So Nepal doesn't have that history, but I'm also, as an analyst, coming here with an open mind, that I don't know, but I don't think that's a possible scenario at this point in time.
Okay.
In 2 years' time, I'll probably be able to tell you either way, okay, this didn't happen, as I said, Jyoti, or three. I mean, as this was an unforeseen event, but
Right.
I don't think the second scenario at this point is possible.
Okay, Akhilesh, we're really running out of time. I just have a few seconds left, but one quick last question to you. The difference between what happened in Nepal and the comparison with Bangladesh last year, 2024, and in Sri Lanka 3 years ago, 2022. Do you think it's similar or it's different?
Both. It's similar in the sense that both are youth-led movements.
Yes.
This is very dissimilar in the sense that there is a huge discontentment with one big dominant force, Sheikh Hasina's regime. I don't even call government.
Yeah.
And then the Awami League's history of liberation war and then distributing patronage randomly. While this is a very organic movement, kind of like as the digital habit of Nepalese have become central to our.
Yeah, and Sri Lanka.
I would not like to draw kind of like with Sri Lanka also, Again, Sri Lanka has very different history, and each of these small states are independently different, in their own ways.
I agree.
And Sri Lanka has a different history, a maritime kind of like
yes.
tropical country. We kind of connected to China by land,
Yeah.
So it would be very difficult to draw analogies.
Akhilesh, I'm afraid I have to leave it there, but this has been a truly fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time, for giving me and for the Tribune your analysis, your explanation about what's happening in Nepal, this very, very special protest by the young people of Nepal. I will be calling upon you in the days and weeks to come, but thank you so much again for speaking to the Tribune.
Pleasure, Jyoti. Pleasure. Thanks to Tribune.
Thank you.